From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
So let's get to the man of the moment. Jack Gantos is one of the preeminent writers for children and young adults working today. In 2012, he won the Newbery Medal for Dead End in Norvelt, his wonderful and wacky semi-autobiographical novel. With his new book, The Key That Swallowed Joey Pigza, Mr. Gantos brings to an end his phenomenal series about young Joey, a lovable boy whose attention deficit hyperactivity disorder brings chaos to every page. Even though Joey is wired bad and wired mad, he is one of the most enduring and charming characters in children's literature. The New York Times once commented that Gantos has a way with boys, or a good memory for being one, and I can attest to that. I first encountered Joey Pigza when I was 11 or 12 years old. Back then there was some concern that I had ADD. A librarian then suggested that I read the book, and I was immediately taken by Joey, who, despite his disability, showed that you could still be a great kid at heart. I took comfort in that. Mr. Gantos, along with Roald Dahl, became my favorite boyhood writer. I can't tell you how thrilling it is for me to be presenting him to you today. So without further delay, Jack Gantos.
Well, thank you for the lovely introduction. It is very nice to be back at the National Book Festival. It seems I come every few years, which means that I haven't ruined anything in the past, naturally. And I noticed that my previous speeches have been left online, so that must mean that they're still being watched. Today, we have a short period of time, and I want to cover a number of things. Yes, and so let me go over here, get this microphone, and get started. Back over here, that works. Okay, no, that's nothing. So here's what I thought we would do. See, that's a picture of me in first grade. And when I'm thinking about children's books, writing children's books, and thinking about the content of children's books, I'm always thinking about, well, what did I do between that age, first grade, and 12th grade? What happened to me during those years that could be possibly significant enough to write about? Because a lot of times people look back over their childhood and they go, nothing interesting ever happened to me. Well, quite frankly, that's what I say about my adult life. Most of the things I'm writing about are taking place right around there. So here's what happened. So you see Harriet the Spy? We all start reading books. Now, let's just say you want to write picture books. Well, you know that you start reading picture books early on. You read Hop on Pop and Go Dog Go and Brown Bear, what do you see? I see a red bird looking at me and the hungry caterpillar. And you read, Harold and the Purple Crayon, and you read Harriet the Spy, and you read Eloise, and you read the George and Martha books, and you Toad, Frog, and Toad, and Where the Wild Things Are, all those fabulous books, right? And so naturally, then you want to write picture books. Well, in my case, I did read those books, but I also then started moving into those shorter novels. And you would read books like A Cricket in Times Square and No Flying in the House and A Squirrel Hotel, The Borrowers, and then, boom, Harriet the Spy. This book really rocked my world because of this. See that diary? My sister had a diary, and I didn't. And so I begged my mother for a diary, and I begged her and begged her and begged her until I pitched a huge fit, and then finally I got a diary. And I promised my mother I would write in it, but then when I opened it up, and there are 500 blank sheets of paper in there, and you look at that thing and you think, wow, nothing interesting ever happens to me. I look at a blank sheet of paper and my mind turns blank. How remarkable. And so I read Harriet the Spy, and Harriet the Spy had a diary. And I thought, well, what's she doing with hers? Because I'm not doing anything with mine. And so I practiced what I call the Harriet the Spy approach to good writing. Basically, spy on everybody. So I put my diary in my bicycle basket, and I drove around my neighborhood, and I drew a spy map on all of my neighbors. And I am one of those kids, well, I'm not a kid anymore, but I'm one of those people that loves knowing everybody else's business. Because to me, that's really the good literary information. So just over here, I got a big sheet of paper. This is my Fort Lauderdale neighborhood. So I drew it out. We had a canal behind our house. It was filled with alligators. My dog in the backyard, Bobo, was eaten by an alligator. So naturally, I wrote that down. And then the low supervision family down here, I love them. I'm telling you, the best thing you could do if you want to write a book is drive around all the really sketchy neighborhoods and buy a house next to the worst possible house you could find, and then just get a lawn chair and a notebook and stare at those people for about a year, and you will have a novel. Mr. Pagoda, he didn't have a job. He called himself an inventor. I think he invented that job. And at any rate, there's a target on the roof because you remember, well, especially Washington remembers, remember 1962 and the Cuban Missile Crisis? This is Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We're less than 100 miles away from Havana, Cuba, which is pointing nuclear-tipped missiles at us, and he's up there painting a nuclear target on his roof, and he's like, up there, come on, Mr. Castro, if you're any man at all, wing one of those things my way. My dad, ex-military, he's the only thing ballistic in that neighborhood, The swimming pool was great. My best friend, Frankie Pagoda, rode his bicycle down the roof, off of the roof, aiming for the pool, missed the pool, hit the edge of the pool with his forehead. Therefore, he had a dent running across his forehead that you could plant like a row of turnips in there, and he was fine. He just looked really bug-eyed. And so this is where I first got started, was just noticing that the world around me was full of really good ideas. So I did that. Now here's the other thing you don't know as a kid, how to organize your material. Remember, you go, okay, teacher, I know I have to write a story. What is it? It's beginning, middle, and end. And you're like, okay, you walk out. It sounds so simple, beginning, middle, and end. But then when you sit down with all your material, and it's just a big mess. So I would make these little lists and charts for myself. Character, setting, problem, that goes in the beginning. Action to crisis, that goes in the middle. And then sort of wrap it up at the end. Look at the emotional and physical ending. And so for me, I started really organizing those notebooks, like my Harriet notebooks, and that helped me get started. And then they would turn into books. And then I would do more maps. Oh, God, the house map is the best. Let's see where the wart is. That's where I ripped the wart off with a pair of pliers. I mean, the blood just shot straight across the room. It was magnificent. And then it got infected, and then I was dragging it around like it was a 3-pound canned ham. And then finally I had to confess to my mother, which she took me to the hospital and said, that's my son. He's an idiot. All these little things. And this is the kind of stuff that I really like. I think sometimes people overlook this kind of daily activities and seeing the really arresting details that take place. The one thing that I always loved having was the dining room table on my map, and then I would put everybody in the family around the table, because when somebody sets the table, and we all sit down. Somebody goes, "How was your day today?" And you know right away that's going to be a story. It's going to come out of somebody's mouth. And if you're a smart person, you keep your journal on your lap and let them talk, and you take notes. I mean, that's how I ended up writing that book, Love, Curse of the Rumbaugh, because my mother was talking about her two sick twin great-great-uncles, Abner and Adolph Rumbaugh, whose, when their mother died, they taxidermed their mother. And I was like, whoa, I got to write that down, you know. Unbelievable, really. To this day, she claims it's true. They mounted her full body on a piece of cardboard, or not cardboard, plywood that they painted like a little rug, put wheels on it, and would wheel their mom around all the time. I didn't know who needed to be taxidermed after that. More books, and then look how smarmy you get, right? Right there, and you think, there could be nothing going on in that kid's head. Are you kidding me? Look at this. My mother was arrested for murder. You know, so you have to write that story down. My dad gave my mom a pistol. She said, "I don't want it." He said, "I'll give you some shooting lessons." She took it outside and fired it off. Next day, there's a headline in the newspaper, "Man found shot dead." My mom called the police and they arrested her. Those kinds of stories are just too good. You can't not write those down. We went to see the first jet land in Barbados. It hit the ground and blew up. We're like, jets are not a good idea. Let's see. Ow. I know, not a good idea, jets. And then, of course, I had to move on. Oh, yes, there. Oh, notebooks. I write all my books out by hand, just like I did as a kid. So I have hundreds of notebooks and where I keep all my notes, and eventually they turn into something. And this one, like that little drawing of a cat, turned into Rotten Ralph. And those things just pop out of your notebooks randomly. And then we get to the Joey books. I got to make sure I get to my watch. So the first Joey book. The first Joey book was 1998. And I walked into a classroom at the Buchanan School in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and there was a kid sitting in front of me at a desk, and he was just spinning right around on his desk, and like his ankle was a unijoint, and he could do a 360 going around, and that kid was so fabulous. Every time I would start a sentence, he would finish it. And eventually, we were like playing a game. I would just say any random half a sentence, and he would shout out any random ending to that sentence, and it would somehow make sense in some sort of surrealist way, but then he would go off laughing like a hyena, and we were just doing this. Like the rest of the class was just sort of plastered back against their own seats, and the teacher was busy over in the corner, and things were going really well until finally, he just raised his hand up in the air and was spinning around and said, "Teacher, teacher, I forgot to take my meds." And the teacher just pointed to the doorway, and that kid shot out of that classroom, went down the hallway, and you could hear him punching the lockers. Bam, 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 all the way down the hallway to the nurse's office. And I remember standing there thinking, my heart just went down the hallway with that kid. That was a great kid. Yes, he might have been a little disruptive. Yes, he might have been a little bit over the top. But yes, he had life in him, that kid. And those are the kinds of kids I like. That's right. And we know this. You look at a kid from the inside out. You look at what they're made of on the inside, not how you judge them on the outside. And Joey went down there, and I thought, I got to write about that kid. And I made a big writing mistake. I wrote not about the first 3 chapters in the third person, and it was all about Joey. And it turned into one of those disease du jour books about ADHD, and it was about the subject and not the kid. And I thought, this is a disservice to any kid. And so I flipped it into the first person. Then you hear Joey's voice come out, and Joey's thoughts, and Joey's feelings, and Joey's emotions, and that story just ran. And that's what in that book, when you read that book, those sentences are 3 or 4 pages long, and they are just like on whippy springs. And I love it. But you do turn blue trying to keep up with those sentences. At any rate, in this first book, so it's Joey's arc from not getting help at home to getting help. And in his particular case, medication, love, and support. Then there's Joey Pigza loses control, where a lot of people might feel that kids don't need meds. If the kid was any man at all, they could just get off of those meds. And that's how his father feels. So when he goes to visit his father takes the meds away and sort of dares him to stand up and toughen up and be a man and take it. But Joey knows he can't, and he's trying. And what we see in this book is that the kid is more responsible than the adult. And I know that when I talk to kids about this book, they know that kind of upside-down house when the kids are making the right decisions and yet they're surrounded by people who have the authority to make all the wrong decisions. They know what kind of upside-down world that is. And then I wrote, what would Joey do? So in this book, what I want Joey to do is make a friend. Here he is in this dysfunctional family, trapped in this dysfunctional family all the time, and the only portal out of this family would really be to go into the outside world and try and find somebody who is thoughtful and meaningful and nice and kind and empathetic, and so that he can really kind of drill a hole from this dysfunction out this house and to the proper world on the outside. So he makes a great friend, Olivia, the meanest blind girl in the world. But he absolutely falls in love with her, and I love her too. She's just so wonderful. And I love that title, What Would Joey Do? Because he's homeschooled at a religious school, and the sign on the school is, What would Jesus do? And so when Joey first shows up there, he goes, oh, what would Joey do? WWJD. So he thinks this is a good school for me. I know, I got that title as I was walking through a hot parking lot in Tulsa. And I saw one of those little stores. Okay, next. Oh, yeah. So this one in I Am Not Joey Pigza, so what Joey is trying to do is sort of pull that whole family back around through forgiveness. His parents have been absolutely thoughtless in many cases. They've been inconsistent. They've been absent. They've been thoughtless and mean at times and absent at times and other issues. And so Joey thinks, you know what? Maybe we can become a family if we decide to sort of roll back the clock, if everybody could be forgiven. And so he practices this really strong approach to forgiving his parents, and it really almost works. And finally, this is the last Joey Pigza book, and now we've come around full circle to the key that swallowed Joey Pigza. In this book, what I'm trying to show, since I have to bring it together, is that Joey takes one last leap to take care of his mother and his father, and now he has a younger brother. And Joey is taking care of that younger brother. And you could see that if Joey can make all the right choices to take care of that younger brother, then you know that he can make the same right choices for himself. We take the parents and we don't abandon them, we don't jettison them, but we allow the parents to manage their own lives while Joey understands that he will launch into his own set of decisions in his own life. So that's where I am right now. Those kinds of ideas come in those years when I was a kid. Seeing kids like Joey, going to school with kids like Joey, in neighborhoods like kids like Joey. And that stuff filled my notebooks. It filled my heart knowing that there are great kids out there that are misjudged or misunderstood. And I know I wrote those books with the full intent to make sure that we look at the kids like Joey and we give them a second chance so that you can look into their heart, see the goodness that's in them, and not judge them by what they do, but judge them by who they are. How many minutes do I have? I have 5. 9 minutes. I believe I'm supposed to start asking questions. No, giving answers. I've got to. Does anyone have a question? Could you shout that question out, young lady? She's right over there.
Whoever, come over here to the microphone.
Okay, and in the meantime, young man, could you shout your question out?
In the Dead End and Norvelt books, which parts are from your life and which parts did you make up?
Oh, the Dead End in Norvelt? That book? Okay, that's my town, Norvelt, Pennsylvania. That sign exists. It was started by Eleanor Roosevelt. She exists. That's my grandfather. He existed. That's me in Norvelt. That's my garage. That's my house in Norvelt. That's where that Japanese sniper rifle was. That's what I was shooting at. That's my bloody nose drawing. That's my bedroom, the bedroom of a 90-year-old nun. Those are those landmark history books I was reading. All those books, like the Crusades, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. I read 250 landmark history books in my bedroom. I made an igloo out of them. That's my dad. That's my mom cooking the baby. Those are the values. Right here you can see the values in Norvelt. You know, Jefferson, great President Jefferson, said that America should be set up in such a way that every house has enough land to grow crops and feed a family in time of need. And that's how Norvelt was set up. Everybody had enough ground to grow their own crops. And so my mom would grow crops and feed the elderly. And then Miss Volker, remember Miss Volker? I was typing up those obituaries. She was giving lectures. I did needlepoint. Remember the Hells Angels? Oh, they were rough. They were good, though, at Halloween. They'd hand out beer. I know. My dad would always take it right out of my candy bag. But they scared me, too. Oh, yes, Girl Scouts the horse. There's my dad's playing more books. The shovel. That was my birthday gift. So to answer your question, which I did in a long way, but a visually satisfying way, I think, I would say about half of Norvelt is true, but then you need a plot. You know, if you have a gun, as they say in the theater, if a gun exists in the first scene, it is going to fire off, right? And remember all those ladies died. So, yes, 50-50. I believe in a thorough answer. 5 minutes, okay.
Go.
Young lady.
B, ADHD myself.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for your fellow scatterbrains?
Oh. Do I have advice for fellow scatterbrains? Yes, I do. You just try and be a little bit more organized than you think you should be. So, for instance, when it comes to writing novels, you know, you don't start writing a novel in 12 different notebooks. You know, you start trying to get it organized. This chapter, and these notes go with that chapter, and you just practice really good organizational habits. So even though your mind is randomly being bombarded with, rogue thoughts all day long, when they come in, your instinct should be, that is a great thought. Where does it belong? And practice some sort of habit that says, this is kind of a beginning idea. This is kind of a middle idea. This is kind of an ending idea. And not just let that thing roll around like a free radical going any which way it wants to. You want to make sure your ideas are sort of, block-shaped instead of circular shape, because they'll just roll like marbles all through your head, right? You want to build walls. So good luck with that. Just be hyper-organized. Thank you. I'll be selling those square ideas later today. Yes, young man.
When you were a kid, did you like writing about your adult neighbors or your kid neighbors more? Like, was it more fun to see what stupid stuff adults did or stupid stuff kids did?
Well, okay, so was it more exciting to write about stupid adults or stupid kids, or just nice adults, nice kids that did stupid things, which is more like it? I really liked seeing a good adult gaffe. It just thrilled me, to watch my father set the grill on fire, right? And then, he poured in all of that charcoal starter, and we were right next to a dead palm tree, and that flame went up and caught that tree on fire, and it was like a 50-foot torch up there. And it was like, oh my God. And there was no way you were going to do anything. And I was like, I was aghast. And then I thought, that is like so cool, because my dad did that. If I had done that, I would have to be climbing up there with a bucket to try and put it out. So when you see your parents really do things that aren't really sharp, that's pretty good. I like that. In the meantime, your friends, I like the friends when they did stuff too. Like, we made a Roman catapult. Gary Pagoda took a tree, cut all the branches off it. It was a whippy pine tree. Cut all the branches off and made us climb to the top with a rope and hang on like a koala bear. And then he winched it down from a tow truck. And then he would cut the rope and we would go whoosh and launch ourselves across the yard. And we just called that the Roman catapult. And you would land, so painfully, and absolutely crawl back, moaning about it, and just nothing but pure pleasure. I dislocated the shoulder when I hit a gold Mercury Cougar and left a dent. Finally, speaking of leaving a dent, I hope I've left some sort of impression upon you. I know that they have me going out to sign some books a little later, right after this, I believe. The Joey Pigza book, The Key That Swallowed Joey Pigza, that is the new Joey book, and that's the one we are featuring. I hope to see all of you. Keep up the good work, read the good books, and certainly write the future books. Thank you very much. A pleasure being at the National Book Festival.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.